This is Federalist 44, Part 5. We're going to start at paragraph 17. 2. This Constitution and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made, or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. The indiscreet zeal of adversaries to the Constitution has betrayed them into an attack on this part of it also. So he says, there's another attack on us. A whole lot of articles are being written by anti-federalists attacking this part that we say the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Remember, from the time we started working on these Federalists, I said they are in the Federalist Papers. Publius is explaining the Constitution, is explaining federalism, is explaining Republican form of government, and at the same time answering all those criticisms that are being printed in different newspapers in New York by the anti-federalists. So that's why he says that those people who attack us on this part of it also, without which it would have been evidently and radically defective. To be fully sensible of this, we need only suppose for a moment that the supremacy of the state constitution had been left complete by a saving clause in their favor. In the first place, as these constitutions invest the state legislatures with absolute sovereignty in all cases not accepted by the existing Articles of Confederation, all the authorities contained in the proposed Constitution, so far as they exceed those enumerated in the Confederation, would have been annulled, and the new Congress would have been reduced to the same impotent condition with their predecessors. In the next place, as the constitutions of some of the states do not even expressly and fully recognize the existing powers of the Confederacy and express saving of the supremacy of the former would, in such states, have brought into question every power contained in the proposed Constitution. In the third place, as the constitutions of the states differ much from each other, it might happen that a treaty or national law of great and equal importance to the states would interfere with some and not with other constitutions, and would consequently be valid in some of the states at the same time that it would have no effect in others. So on and on he goes. He goes, if we don't unite, we'll have different states, make different treaties with different countries, and even if we stay united under the old system, under the Confederation, you will soon realize that these treaties might vary and it would put different states at odds with each other. It would make them distrustful of one another, and that is just going to lead to more distrust and eventually war. So that is not going to be a good thing for us. Then it continues, in fine, the world would have seen for the first time a system of government founded on an inversion of the fundamental principle of all government. It would have been the authority of the whole society everywhere subordinate to the authority of the parts. It would have seen a monster in which the head was under the direction of the members. In other words, with 13 bodies, confused brain, no central authority giving these a uniform direction for their own good. That's why we said the Constitution of the United States is the supreme law of the land, because as cases come in front of the courts and the judgment is passed, this will make, the good thing about this is that it will make the laws uniform all throughout the states. All the lower courts will know what the greatest judicial authority has said, and they in turn will look at cases that come before them and try to keep their decisions informed with what the decision by the higher court has been. So uniformity will be there, and stability will come with it. Then we continue 3. The senators and representatives and the members of the several state legislatures and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. So whether you're a representative, whether you're a judge, whether you're a senator, you take an oath to support this Constitution, not to support your state, not to support your president. You're taking an oath to the Constitution. It's extremely important. This part is extremely important. Then he continues, it has been asked why it was thought necessary that the state magistracy should be bound to support the federal Constitution, and unnecessary that a like oath should be imposed on the officers of the United States in favor of the state constitutions. Several reasons might be assigned for this distinction. I content myself with one, which is obvious and conclusive. The members of the federal government will have no agency in carrying the state constitutions into effect. The members and officers of the state governments, on the contrary, will have an essential agency in giving effect to the federal Constitution. The election of the President and Senate will depend, in all cases, on the legislatures of several states, and the election of the House of Representatives will equally depend on the same authority in the first instance, and will probably forever be conducted by the officers and according to the laws of the state. Remember, at that time, at least till the first decade of the 20th century, the senators were elected by the state legislatures. And the same way, state legislatures were very powerful, indirectly or directly, in election of the presidents, because state legislatures are who decide what the electoral college votes, what the electoral votes of the state will be divided. So he says, look, in every way your state is going to be so powerful. 4, among the provisions for giving efficacy to the federal powers might be added those which belong to the executive and judiciary departments. But as these are reserved for particular examination in another place, I pass them over in this. He says there are certain things that we're going to talk about in the future Federalists. We won't talk about it right now. And the last paragraph, we have now reviewed in detail all the articles composing the sum or quantity of power delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government, and are brought to this undeniable conclusion that no part of the power is unnecessary or improper for accomplishing the necessary objects of the Union. The question, therefore, whether this amount of power shall be granted or not, resolves itself into another question, whether or not a government commensurate to the exigencies of the Union shall be established, or in other words, whether the Union itself shall be preserved. So in the previous few Federalist Papers, Madison says, we talked about all the authority that has been given to the federal government. Yes, there has been criticism, but if you want a good union, a perpetual union, a union that will be good for not only you, for future generations, for your prosperity, then you have to give the government that's going to keep your rights secure the authority to get the job done. So if you expect it to do its job without giving the right authority, then you're mistaken. Maybe you just don't even want this union. You don't want to preserve this union. Okay, the part that I said earlier about the state legislatures electing the senators as well as indirectly electing the president, obviously that's very important. We will talk about it more when we get to the part on electing the senators as well as the president. I didn't want to just go through it very fast because it is important. You'll see how it has affected the United States government right now. The electoral college, electoral votes, how the state legislatures decide to divide the electoral votes of a state. We'll get there. I don't want to confuse you. Electoral votes of a state is equal to the number of representatives that state sends to the House of Representatives plus 2 senators, plus 2. So different states have different electoral votes. California has 55. It's the most populous state. Okay. Wyoming has 3. It has the least population. It has 1 vote because they get 1 member for the House of Representatives, and they still have 2 senators, so they get 3. So we'll talk about this later on. It's very important.